What if boats used to look this good? What if a 15-foot fiberglass runabout could have taller tailfins than a Cadillac Coupe de Ville? What if a small Texas company sold 4,000 boats in its third year of business, just by making them look like sports cars? Today we're looking at the strangest, wildest, most brilliantly designed fiberglass hulls ever built. From 1956 to 1973, only a handful still survive. Made by J&R Plasticraft Corporation of Reeseville, Wisconsin from 1956 to 61. The name basically tells you everything you need to know. This boat was inspired by jet aviation, and it had the fins to prove it. Reeseville is a tiny farming town in the middle of Wisconsin. Population of a few hundred people. Not exactly the sort of place you would expect to find a boat manufacturer building futuristic runabouts inspired by fighter aircraft. But that was the beauty of fiberglass. All you needed was a mold and some resin, and you were suddenly a boat builder. The glass jet was aimed at inland Midwestern lakes, where its flat bottom and light weight meant it could plane on modest outboard power. Very few are believed to survive. Most got worn out by Wisconsin farmers on Wisconsin lakes, then eventually scrapped for outboards. If you find one, buy it. A boat named after a jet from a Wisconsin farming town, very on brand for the 1950s. Meanwhile, in Minnesota, a sporting goods catalog was trying its hand at the same trick. Herter's Eldorado Herters was a Minnesota mail-order sporting goods company. Fishing tackle, guns, hunting gear, you name it. In the late 1950s, they decided that what their catalog really needed was a fiberglass runabout with automotive styling. The Eldorado was their answer. Named after the Cadillac Eldorado that had come out earlier in the decade, it borrowed the automotive glamour of the era without any of the actual Cadillac connection. The Eldorado sat somewhere between 15 and 16 feet long. Flat bottom, tall tail fins, two-tone paint, sold through the Herter's mail order catalog alongside decoys and duck calls and fishing rods. Possibly the most 1950s Midwestern thing ever committed to paper. Buy your groceries, your dog food, and your finned fiberglass runabout, all from the same catalog. Herter's went out of business in the 70s, and the Eldorado disappeared with it. Surviving examples occasionally turn up at estate sales in the upper Midwest, a wonderfully weird corner of American boat history that almost nobody outside Minnesota remembers. A speedboat sold next to duck decoys in a hunting catalog. The 1950s had a way of doing things. Next up was a much bigger deal. Bellboy was founded in 1952 by Arch Talbot at Bellingham Shipyards in Washington State. And according to the historical record, they were the first company in America to produce all fiberglass boats. The Banshee was the wild child of the Bellboy line. Custom-designed fins with running lights built into them, padded interior, a hull shape that pointed forward like it was already going fast, even when sitting still on the trailer. By 1957, Bellboy was moving $3 million in factory sales through 200 dealers nationwide. They opened plants in Indiana and New York to boost annual capacity to 6,000 boats. Life was good. And then, in 1963, the parent shipyard went bankrupt trying to complete a Navy contract. Bellboy was sold to Tacoma-based Sabercraft, which discontinued the whole line. So the pioneer of American fiberglass boats vanished after just 11 years. Pioneers. Ambition. A Navy contract that killed the whole enterprise. That brings us to a smaller boat that was somehow even wilder. Made by Cutter Boats, Tennies of Tell City, Indiana from 1957 to 1962. The fiberglass division of the Owens Yacht Company out of Baltimore, located right on the Ohio River, just north of the Kentucky state line. The Jet de Ville represented what Cutter considered their best design. Sleek, low, massive fins, bucket seats, twin exhaust ports built into the transom. For pure visual drama. powered by classic Mercury Mark 55 Thunderbolt 4 outboards. The boat looked like a scaled-down Cadillac land yacht with a propeller instead of tires. Cutter only built these for about 5 years before shutting the fiberglass division down, which is why finding one today is like finding a matched numbers muscle car in a barn. Rare, valuable, and absolutely worth the hunt. In 1960, the Owens brothers retired and sold their operations to Brunswick Corporation. Yes, that Brunswick Corporation. Cutter carried on for 2 more years before shutting the fiberglass division down. That is why the Jet de Ville remains a footnote in American boat history that most people have never heard of, which is exactly the sort of thing this list exists for. 5 years of production, a handful of survivors, which brings us to something truly weird. Now here is where things get truly weird. The South Seas Samoan was a fiberglass catamaran, twin hulls joined by a bridge deck, just 17 feet long, designed by Bob Adams of Chuluta, Florida, powered by dual 70 horsepower Mercury outboards, which was properly serious power for the era. This boat ran at 32 miles per hour with 1 person aboard, 29 miles per hour with 6 passengers, which for a fiberglass twin hull in the late 1950s was about as fast as anything on the water. Only 3 known examples remain, which makes it one of the rarest of the rare. The Samoan borrowed its swept lines straight from the Pontiacs of the era. Basically insane for a fiberglass boat company from Central Florida to have pulled off, especially without any of the massive design budgets that Detroit was spending in the same era. A Florida boat builder predicting American car design a full year ahead of Detroit. But one of America's oldest boat brands was about to try its own fiberglass experiment. The famous American boat brand entered the fiberglass age in 1958. Sort of. Because the Silver Arrow was not actually a real fiberglass boat. Chris Craft built the hull out of traditional cedar wood and then wrapped a fiberglass shell around the outside. Sneaky, but necessary, because Chris Craft did not yet trust the material for a full production run. The Silver Arrow was 19 feet long, powered by a 312 cubic inch Ford Interceptor V8 producing 215 horsepower. Twin fins on the transom, silver-white paint scheme, and 2-tone tango red interior. Chris Craft only built 92 of these boats over 2 years, 1958 and 1959. Of those 92, only 44 came with the Ford Interceptor engine, and it is estimated that only about 30 still exist, which makes finding one a genuine collector's coup. Original examples in restored condition sell for well into the tens of thousands. A wooden boat wearing a fiberglass jacket. Chris Craft was hedging its bets. The next design took none of that half-measure approach. Bob Hammond and 3 partners founded Glastron on the 14th of October, 1956 in Austin, Texas. The Fireflight was their first production model. 16 feet gunnel length, panoramic windshield, full lighting, flotation cushions, bow bumpers, and custom upholstery, which was a properly impressive feature package for a boat aimed at the value end of the market. Hammond had learned fiberglass laminating at Douglas Aircraft during the Second World War, then briefly worked at Lone Star before deciding to strike out on his own, which he did with just over $20,000 of investment pooled from a small group of backers. Only 24 Fireflights were built in the first year, but Glastron would produce 900 boats in year 2, 4,000 in year 3, and eventually become one of the most recognizable American boat brands ever. All from a 5-meter prototype built in a rented garage, a garage prototype that led to 4,000 boats a year. And Glastron's other big hit came next. 16 or 17 feet long depending on the model year. Bigger, wider, faster than the original Fireflight. Introduced around 1958, cathedral-style hull with sharp double fins on the transom. Sold with an optional hardtop that made it look like a small mahogany speedboat had a jet-age nightmare. Bob Hammond was riding the wave of automotive boat crossover styling harder than anyone, and the Sea Flight was his mainstream commercial hit. Every American boat brochure of the era featured a Sea Flight lookalike somewhere in its pages. That is a testament to how much the Sea Flight defined the visual language of late 50s fiberglass boating. Even competitors like the Red Fish Sea Shark were designed to look like Sea Flights, which was flattering, sure, but also a source of quiet frustration in Austin. Original Sea Flights are exceptionally scarce. Popular boats always get used hard, stored badly, left in barns. Restored ones show up at boat shows every year in small numbers, and they always draw a crowd. Because there is something about that late 50s Glastron silhouette that just works. The most copied fiberglass boat of the era, which is a strange thing to be famous for, and one of those copies came next. Made by the Red Fish Boat Company of Clarksville, Texas, founded in 1957. The Shark was 15 feet 9 inches long, fiberglass hull, massive tailfins, and a hull design that, according to Glastron historian Bill Anderson, was suspiciously similar to Glastron's own boats, because Redfish had apparently reverse-engineered Glastron's mold shapes, which happened all the time in the 50s fiberglass era, since patents were basically unenforceable for hull shapes at the time. Redfish sold everywhere they were offered. Then, in the early 1960s, the company went bankrupt. Iola Molded Plastics bought the molds and jigs and continued production under the IMP name. That explains why old Red Fish and IMP boats look so similar. Identical hull, different sticker. Original Red Fish Sharks in restored condition are quite collectible on the vintage boat circuit now, because they represent a specific moment in American fiberglass history, when the industry was moving so fast that companies were literally copying each other's molds, and nobody bothered stopping them. Reverse-engineered molds and a bankruptcy fire sale. Now we get to the queen of the whole finned era. The Sea Lark started life as a concept boat commissioned by Evinrude in 1956, designed by Brooks Stevens, the American industrial designer who would later create the Excalibur car and, less charitably, the Oscar Mayer Wienermobile. Stevens's brief was to design a boat that would grab attention at the Chicago and New York boat shows, which he absolutely did. Tailfins that stood almost half the height of the boat itself, a double bubble windscreen, bucket seats, aeronautical-style dashboard, two-tone paint. The original Evinrude Lark was custom-built and cost $11,000 in 1956 money, which is about $120,000 today. Wagemaker's Cadillac Marine and Boat Company then built roughly 3 similar production versions labeled the Cadillac Sea Lark. Only a handful still exist, which makes it the holy grail of finned fiberglass boats. The concept car of American boat design, 2 known survivors, and Brooks Stevens's twin project came next. Because Wagemaker owned 2 brands, they released essentially the same boat under 2 different nameplates. Cadillac Sea Lark was the flashy showboat sibling. The Wolverine Javelin was the same design sold to a slightly different demographic under a slightly different marketing pitch. Same twin fins, same futuristic styling, same fiberglass hull from Wagemaker's US Molded Shapes division in Grand Rapids. Just a different badge. Because Wagemaker was that sort of company. Both boats used photography borrowed from Outboard Marine Corporation to promote themselves, and both essentially disappeared from the market by the early 60s as customer tastes shifted toward more sensible-looking runabouts. Only a handful of Javelins remain, even fewer than the Cadillac, because Wagemaker's marketing effort focused on the Cadillac name once they realized that was the one people remembered. 1 design, 2 badges, the lesser-known twin of the most famous finned fiberglass ever built. Now to one of the era's biggest-selling designs. Glasspar G3 Bill Tritt's Glasspar Company introduced the G3 in 1959. And unlike almost every other boat on this list, the G3 was intentionally not finned, not chromed, not two-tone. In fact, the G3 was the anti-fin boat. Sharp lines, modern styling, featherweight construction, just 390 pounds of hull. Very forward-thinking for the era. The G3 was aimed squarely at the American water skiing market, which was exploding in the late 50s as suburban families discovered the joys of dragging each other across lakes at 40 miles per hour. Rated for 60 horsepower, the G3 would hit 45 to 50 miles per hour on modest outboards, but owners routinely fitted much larger V4 and V6 engines, because that was what you did in the late 50s. Overbuild everything. The G3 became one of the best-selling fiberglass boats of its era, which quietly signaled the beginning of the end for the finned fiberglassics. The boat that killed the finned era by simply not having any fins, which is a wonderfully quiet way to end a design movement. But before that ending, fins reached their peak absurdity. Lone Star Boats was founded in Grand Prairie, Texas in 1945. By 1952, they had added a fiberglass facility. Bob Hammond was hired to run it before he left to start Glastron. Hammond designed the Meteor in 1956 as a boat of the future demonstrator. It caused a sensation at the New York and Chicago boat shows in 1957. And a demonstrator it was. 15 feet of pure jet age craziness. Working headlights on the bow, chrome trim everywhere, two-tone paint, and tail fins so large they cast their own shadow. In production from 1956 to 1959. Around 60 examples are believed to still exist, which by fiberglassic standards is actually a decent survival rate. Restored examples sell for anywhere between $5,000 and $15,000 depending on originality, and every single one of them draws a bigger crowd at boat shows than the newer boats parked next to them. Headlights on a boat. Fiberglassic survival rates measured in dozens. And now to the boat you actually might recognize. Yes, this is the boat you know from the movies. Glastron's GT-150 was already a popular fiberglass runabout by the early 70s, featuring the company's famous SSV hull design and sharp automotive-inspired styling. Then, in 1972, something remarkable happened. James Bond producers came calling. On the 16th of October, 1972, stuntman Jerry Como sat in a GT-150 on a Louisiana bayou, hit a hidden wooden ramp at a speed, and launched the boat 110 feet through the air, over a road, over a police car, over a bamboo dummy of Sheriff J.W. Pepper, and landed flat in the water on the far side. The cameras rolled once. There was no second take. The Guinness Book of World Records logged it as the longest filmed speedboat jump in cinema history. When Live and Let Die opened in June 1973, Glastron's annual production climbed to 24,000 units, which is what happens when James Bond drives your boat. The GT-150 became the most famous fiberglass runabout in the world overnight. Every kid in every American driveway who saw that movie wanted one. Not a bad way for a small Texas boat company to end up as the closing entry on any list of insane fiberglass hulls. A 110-foot boat jump, a world record, and a company that quietly became a household name. If this got you thinking, go watch our deep dive on most insane sports fishers ever. Another corner of vintage boating the mainstream world has forgotten. Which of these would you actually want in your garage? Subscribe for more like this. Thanks for hanging out.